Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of In the Corner. I'm Cashed Out. Today we have episode 134. We've got a very, very exciting boxing match tomorrow night in Arizona as Emanuel Navarrete and Eduardo Sugar Nunez are going to put their super featherweight titles on the line in unification. I think we're all mostly excited for that. You also have a UFC card in Mexico. But before we preview those, we're going to talk about an update on the whole war that's going on in boxing right now promotionally with the traditional promoters like Matchroom, Queensberry, Golden Boy against the new regime that is Zuffa Boxing with TKO and Sela and the Ring Magazine. Big news came out yesterday, and that is that Conor Benn will be making his Zuffa Boxing debut, I guess you could say, against Regis Prograis as co-main event to the Tyson Fury Arslanbek Makhmudov card on Netflix. Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Conor Benn's third consecutive fight at Spurs. He's getting paid $15 million to fight Regis Prograis. Regis Prograis has not been on great run of form. He's pretty washed. I think that's fair to say. He's a 140-pounder, being brought up to 150 pounds. This is a catch weight. Ben is still on his way down from 160 to get back to welterweight, so I guess they're kind of meeting in the middle. Doesn't want to go all the way down to 147 just yet. So Prograis is not only coming up in weight, but is out of his prime. And it's just like, wow, I mean, everyone's just pointing out, like, dude, Conor Benn got a steal here because it's not even like he's fighting on the Zuffa Boxing show in the Apex or something. He's getting to fight in the stadium on Netflix, getting paid $15 million in a fight in which he's going to be heavily favored. Now, I actually think that Conor Benn still has to be proven a little bit. I thought that he looked fantastic against Eubank, and I do think that he will beat Regis Prograis. I don't have much doubt about that, but there is always a chance, that Prograis has something left in him to cause a big upset. But no, yeah, I have to think that Conor Benn is a massive favorite in this fight. And it's just bringing a lot of questions about, oh, maybe this Zuffa Boxing deal isn't what we initially thought. When he was announced, we were like, wow, he is a Zuffa Boxing fighter now. He's going to be fighting on Zuffa cards. He's on a long-term deal, similar to Jaya Pataya. Then we find out, oh, it's a one-fight deal. This $15 million that they're paying him, that's not coming out of Zuffa Boxing. That's not coming out of TKO's pockets. Mark Shapiro on a earnings call said that yeah, that's Turkey and them paying him. That's Sela. They're the ones who are funding Zuffa. They're the ones who are going to pay Conor Benn that money, and that Conor Benn will not fight on Zuffa Boxing cards. He's going to fight on one of their super fight cards, and of course that is Fury Makhmudov. They were also confirmed to be promoting that event on Netflix. So there's kind of two versions of Zuffa right now. There's Zuffa that is Dana White's job, and that's their series they're doing out of the Apex, and then you have the super fights that they promote. Conor Benn is fighting on that. It's the same thing as them signing Canelo or Crawford to a one-fight deal. And so I'm kind of like, wow, you kind of shot yourself in the foot here because you started this whole war with Eddie Hearn where he thinks that, Conor left him for all this. Like, no, he took one deal to go fight on another Ring Magazine card. He just fought on two Ring Magazine cards in 2025 with Eubank. Those weren't matchroom events. They were involved, but they were Ring Magazine cards. Now he's just fighting on another one that Eddie's not involved with, but TKO is. So it's not that big of a deal, in my opinion. In the long run, it's a big deal, but it's much less of a big deal than we initially thought it was. I'm still just blown away that he's able to get this deal. $15 million fight on the undercard. I think this also kind of early should not worry UFC fighters as much because you know that this isn't TKO who's paying the boxers this much. This is Turkey who's already been heavily investing in the sport and buying all this stuff. So it's good to have that clarification. And then we also had the confirmation that from Eddie Hearn that Matchroom is in a legal process regarding them trying to match Zuffa's offer. Apparently they said, usually you're given the opportunity to. We tried to, but we weren't given the full number of that offer. So I think that I don't know if they're saying they're going to sue, but they're trying to get some clarification on how much that deal is actually worth because they weren't given the opportunity, the fair shake, to try and match it because they weren't given how much that deal was worth. So it's a really, really interesting time in boxing. To me, this is, first of all, I'm happy for Conor Benn. I like this. I mean, getting Tyson Fury and Conor Benn on the same card is great. It's also a huge statement of intent from TKO and Ring Magazine saying, yeah, we took Fury and we took Conor Benn. That is Queensberry's biggest fighter. That is arguably Matchroom's biggest fighter right now. Neither of them are involved in the promotion of this event. Dana White is, it seems. So the Conor Benn deal is not what he thought it was, but he's still getting a great deal. Now, what I think is maybe even more interesting and crazy is Frank Warren's Queensberry is apparently embroiled in and preparing a $1 billion lawsuit against Sela and Zuffa Boxing. And essentially, this is because they believe that they have been excluded from Ring Magazine events or whatever. As we all know, Frank Warren was the first one who shook hands with Turkey. He was the first one that did an event in Saudi Arabia. At the start of all this Riyadh season fights, he was the only promoter involved. He was the one promoting Tyson Fury, Francis Ngannou. And then from that point on, when they did Day of Reckoning and Joshua versus Ngannou, that was when Eddie Hearn started to come in. And then subsequently Top Rank got involved. Golden Boy Boxer, even PBC, everybody got involved with Turkey. But at the beginning it was Frank Warren. And it was clear that he and Turkey had a deal because they were the lead promoter on a lot of those early events. The other promoters were involved, but Queensberry was the lead promoter. And then over time, as things changed, as Ring Magazine started to move more into U.S.-based fighters and fights than UK-based, he wasn't involved in every event, whatever. And over the last few months, he hasn't been overly involved at all. I mean, they were a promoter of that David Benavidez card because Anthony Yarde was in the main event. They had a fighter on the Eubank Ben rematch card in Echo Esserman and Sam Gilly. Hamza Shiraz headlined one of the U.S. cards, so they were involved there. But other than that, over the past 6 months, that's really all they've done. They've had no fighters on any of the Turkey cards this year, and they have no plans to do any of that. Except for Frank was on the press conference for Fury versus Makhmudov, but apparently he's not involved with it. I don't know. Now, this is just crazy because I guess that he had a deal. He feels like Turkey violated that deal by going directly towards, signing a new deal with TKO, where now they're exclusive partners, where he was like, I thought we were exclusive partners. And you're doing these big events without me. So that's where the lawsuit comes from. We've known for a while now, at least it's been rumored, that these two did have a falling out, and that appears to be so. Now, what was the craziest part of all this is Ring Magazine's response. Now, remember, he's not suing Ring Magazine, but he's suing Zuffa and Sela, which are both Turkey Al-Sheikh entities. Turkey writes up a response on Ring Magazine, which, again, Ring Magazine is meant to be a news source. They did not break this news at all of the lawsuit. They wait until later in the day where they say, rumors are reporting in the boxing world that Frank Warren is preparing a lawsuit because he is in financial trouble, saying that Queensberry Promotions is in financial trouble without the assistance of Turkey's events. Now, that is just untrue. Queensberry in their last fiscal year turned a profit of $15 million, apparently. And they then go on to say that they noticeably timed this, before their press conference for Wardley vs. Dubois, which has been struggling to sell tickets. The event tickets did not go on sale until this morning. When they posted that, there were no general sale tickets available. They hadn't started selling tickets. And Ring Magazine, which is meant to be news, is just straight up telling you, yeah, the event's struggling to sell tickets. They haven't even gone on sale. That has, there was no background check. There was no nothing. They're just typing out shit and just trying to criticize and accuse Frank Warren and all this stuff. Then they go on to say how, with the uncertainty of him dealing with Turkey, a lot of Queensberry fighters have been out in the dark. They don't know when their next fight's going to be, and they are frustrated and actively seeking new promotional agreements. It's just not true. There's just no, maybe that's true, but there's no fact to it. They don't list any names. They don't have any proof, really. Again, they're just reporting on rumors and making shit up. So I just think it's very disappointing to see that because Turkey did buy Ring Magazine, they are no longer a trusted news source. It's like insanely biased, and it's just ridiculous. Now, on the same, it just came out today that Don King is now also preparing a lawsuit against Sela, Ring Magazine, the WBA, and Michael Hunter over the announced Jarrell Miller fight in September. So Jarrell Miller, Michael Hunter was meant to headline one of those fight week cards that they had during Canelo versus Crawford fight week. Essentially back then we knew that Don King said, no, Michael Hunter's my fighter. He has nothing to do with this. I wasn't informed of this fight at all. He made this deal without me. He's meant to fight. I think he was set to fight Pulev, in October, as opposed to doing this. And then neither of those fights end up happening. Pulev goes on to lose his title, whatever. But Don King looks like he's not giving up on that lawsuit. I don't know how he's still relevant in boxing today, but it is what it is. This war is only getting started.
I mean, you hear Dana White, we're beating up babies, which is very funny, and I don't know. I mean, it's not looking good for the guys in boxing, if I'm being honest, but it's also not looking like it's not a great look from TKO. I think they've had some fumbles with their whole announcement of the Conor Benn deal because now UFC fighters are pissed. They think that they're getting the short end of the stick with this pay. It's going to be, it's just every single day there's something new happening. And I mean, just to think that Frank Warren and Turkey were best friends and sitting next to each other, and now they're in a legal battle against one another. And no Queensberry fighters are going to fight on Turkey cards. No Daniel Dubois fighting for them. No Fabio Wardley. No Agit Kabayel. No Hamza Shiraz. Like, these are like their biggest stars, and they're not fighting on Turkey cards, and that could cost them. But it looks like they're doing just good on their own. All right, now let's talk about the fights we've coming up this weekend, starting with the one I've been most anticipated for. Is maybe the fight I was most excited for this entire month, and that is, of course, Vaquero versus Sugar, Navarrete versus Nunez, two Mexican warriors. And, you know, we can call Abu warriors. These two guys are straight up warriors. You look at Eduardo Nunez, the guy is 29-1, 27 knockouts. Those two wins that come by the distance were just in his last two when they were world title fights. Emanuel Navarrete, he's 39, 2-1, 32 knockouts. Really, really good competitive fight. Both these guys, I mean, they both have world championships. They're both Mexican. I think it is such a good fight. It is a 50-50, and it's been very hard for me to tell who's going to win. Obviously, Navarrete is the more experienced champion. He's been there. I think he's like a 3-division champion. Really, really well-versed, well-experienced. Just a great fighter. Now, the thing is, he has not looked great in his last few fights. Honestly, hold the Robey, or no, not Robey, that was the same night. The Oscar Valdez rematch, which he looked great in. The Charlie Suarez fight, he barely got out with a no contest. Dennis Baranchuk, he lost that fight when he moved up. Robson Conceição was a draw. He did not look good there. And then he takes you back to the first Oscar Valdez fight in 2023. So, I mean, and the one before that was with Liam Wilson, which sure he stopped him, but going into that, that was a very, very tight fight. Yeah, he has not looked great. Whereas Sugar Nunez, I mean, I want to say, oh, Sugar Nunez has looked amazing, but you also remember his last fight with Pitufo Diaz, it was a fight of the year candidate, but it was really close. It was really, really close. Before that, I thought he looked really good against Rikishi. In all of his fights before that, he's been looking very, very solid. But it is just, it's making me think who is going to win this fight. Because neither of these guys are the best fighter in the division. I think that's Oshaki Foster, and apparently he will be ringside on Saturday night. Hopefully he can get a fight with the winner. I think that's what he wants. But yeah, this is a phenomenal fight. I'm actually going to pick Sugar Nunez just because I'm a big fan of him, and I feel like he has been going on a good run, and he's been more active. Navarrete has not recorded a good win since Oscar Valdez in the rematch, and before that, it was the first fight. He only has one good win in the past 3 years, whereas Nunez has, at least a handful. Yeah, it's an interesting fight. It really is, and I'm curious to see who gets their hand raised on Saturday night. I think it probably goes the distance. I can very much see a stoppage, in the later rounds, really from either guy, but probably from Sugar Nunez, just because he does seem to be the more powerful one of the two. But I mean, this one, it could go either way. It is a 51-49 kind of fight. And most people are picking Navarrete. I'm just going to pick Nunez. Maybe I'm crazy. We'll see. Also on the card, Tamir Smalls steps up yet again. He's fighting Abel Ramos, who was, of course, coming off a draw with Mario Barrios. Now, that draw with Mario Barrios probably didn't age well, but at the time it was a pretty good win, or a pretty good performance on Netflix. He has not fought since then. It's been close to a year and a half. Tamir Smalls, 16-0, coming off a really, really good win in October over Jose Roman. Yeah, I mean, that was a big step up, where I was like, oh, I don't know if he's ready for this. This is another one. This is another fight where he's stepping up, but I think that he can do it. So Bill Ramos is kind of like his comeback fight, but yeah, I'm going to go with Tamir Smalls to win it. Also, Emiliano Vargas, everyone's favorite super lightweight prospect, back in another 10-rounder fighting Augustine Quintana. Quintana is 22 wins, 2 losses, and 1 draw, so a solid opponent. But Emiliano Vargas getting to stay active, stay on a big card with Top Rank not having a TV deal still. And Arturo Cardenas going to fight Jordan Martinez, battle of the undefeated. Cardenas' last performance I thought was his best. I thought he looked really good. So excited to see him back in action. You move over to UFC Mexico. I'm going to be honest,
this is not the best UFC card we've ever had. It's pretty rough. Most of the fights on here are quite lopsided in the odds. Main event: Brandon Moreno faces short notice replacement loner Kavanagh. He's had enough time where it's been about a month, I think around 3 or 4 weeks. Out is when he got the call. Nobody really knows why he's the one who got this. He was number 15 ranked until right before fight week started, and then he was removed from those rankings as somebody else took his spot. I can't remember who it is. There was a lot of better options, I thought, for Moreno to fight. And Kavanagh was a solid prospect. He got knocked out in his last fight, and now here he is already getting a main event slot against the number 6 guy. So big opportunity for him, but I have to go with Brandon Moreno here. It's not really a hard pick, especially considering the fights in Mexico. He's going to have his people behind him. He was finished just in December by Tatsuro Taira. It's a very quick turnaround. Maybe that's something to keep an eye on, but I think he gets this one done and then moves on to another big fight of the flyweight division. Co-main event is Chito Vera fighting David Martinez, 9 versus 10 in the bantamweight division. Chito Vera is on a 3-fight skid. David Martinez, I think this is just his 3rd fight in the UFC, coming off a really good win in September where he beat Rob Font just I think on a few days' notice or something like that. I'm going to pick David Martinez to win this one. He's Mexican. This feels like kind of an opportunity for him to fight a big name and enter that upper echelon of the bantamweight division. Daniel Zellhuber versus King Green. Zellhuber's on a 2-fight losing streak himself. King Green is on a win streak, actually, a 1-fight win streak over Lance Gibson, I think in December. So I don't know, man. I mean, this isn't a horrible fight on the main card. I think Daniel Zellhuber should win this fight, theoretically. If he doesn't, it's really not good, and he may get cut. But I think he should be able to beat King Green. Other than that, it's just going to be a lot of one-sided fights. Like Edgar Chavez, big favorite. Emanuel Rodriguez, Santiago Luna, Ryan Gandra. A lot of these guys are just kind of debuting. Aylin Perez versus Macy Chiasson is actually a fight I'm really looking forward to. That's a solid one. Top 8 fight in the bantamweight division. I'm picking Aylin Perez. I'm a really big fan of Macy, so I think she has the ability to pull off the upset, but I'm leaning in the favor of Perez. I think that's actually the closest fight on the card. Christian Quinones versus Chris Mutino. I believe both these guys are 0-5 combined in the last few fights. Probably Quinones because Mutino's not very good. I don't think he ever has had a win in the UFC. Yeah, we shall see. All right, moving on from there. Elijah Pierce versus Lorenzo Parra is going to headline Manny Pacquiao Promotions' 2nd event in the United States. This one is in Verona, New York. And, if it's in Verona, New York at the Turning Stone Casino Resort, you know that Bryce Mills is on the card. I don't know why he always fights there. But, a decent prospect. He's fighting for the WBC Silver 140 titles. That's actually a pretty big title to have. He's fighting Tobias Green. We'll see if he can get it done. But that main event is really interesting to me. Elijah Pierce is a guy who he's very fun to watch. You never want to miss one of his fights because something crazy happened. Last time he was down 8-1 and then gets a stoppage in, I believe, the 9th or 10th round. Lorenzo Parra coming off a draw against Omar Trinidad. So he definitely has the ability to pull off a banana skin. And when this fight got booked the first time, I actually think I booked Parra to. I think I picked Parra to win the fight. And I kind of want to lean in that direction again. I'm going to lean towards Elijah Pierce, but this is a very, very close fight. If the right Elijah Pierce shows up, the one that we've always heard about and seen the potential of, I think that he should be able to beat Lorenzo Parra, but who knows? Undercard, you're going to have Kermel Moton back in action, fighting in a 10-rounder. His first 10-rounder against Wilfredo Flores. I guess a step-up opponent, but definitely somebody Kermel should be able to beat and likely stop. If he's fighting in 10 rounders, that means that they want to move him into a good position. Also on the card is going to be Emanuel Pacquiao Jr. A lot of talk this week because, of course, Kermel Moton is the protege of Floyd. Pacquiao Jr. is the son of Manny, and their rematch was just announced. So somebody at Twitter said there's a handshake agreement between the two for a fight on that card on Netflix. It would be like a 6-round co-main event. And I would love to see that. Why not? I think Kermel Moton absolutely dominates him because Pacquiao Jr. needs a really good performance tomorrow night. And that's because his first fight, he had a draw in his pro debut, which is never that good. And I don't think he won that fight. I think most people would agree on that. Queensberry has a smaller show this weekend. Owen Cooper fighting Constantine Ursu for the British and Commonwealth welterweight championships. Great fight. I love that. Ursu is undefeated. He's been a really, really interesting guy to watch on the top tier shows. He had a great knockout over Ethan James last year. Owen Cooper, 11-1, solid fighter, coming off the win over Chris Kongo. Before that, he got stopped by Echo Esman in the final round of their amazing fight. I'm picking Ursu to win this fight. I don't know if that's. I think he may be the underdog, but that's really just because it's Cooper. Cooper's the Queensberry fighter. It's his home show, you know. But I think Ursu is. From what I've seen, I think that he's really, really good. So I think he can beat Owen Cooper. You got Luke McCormack stepping up to 10 rounds to fight Kane Gardner in just his fifth fight. Ben Fale also stepping up, fighting Mason Cartwright in another 10-rounder. Other than that, just a handful of Queensberry prospects. Nothing to write home about. A smaller card, but we'll take it. ProBox TV lost their main event with Rene Tejas, Hiron, Luis Torres. Still a solid enough card. Edward Vasquez versus Grimardi Machuca. I think that's headlining. And then they posted that it was like co-main events. I don't know who the main event is, but Edward Vasquez, really, really fun fighter to watch. Obviously got stopped by Espinoza in his last fight. Or he's actually had a win since then. Not too familiar with Machuca. 17-3. All three of those losses were, just came. They were most recent. So we'll see. I think Vasquez should be able to get that one done. Co-main event is Ruben Aguilar versus Luis Lopez. Aguilar is 23-0-1, 20 wins by knockout. I think he should be able to beat Luis Lopez. I mean, Lopez in his last 5 fights has had 3 draws, which is crazy. But yeah, I got Aguilar winning that. And then you got a lot of good prospects, like both the Bocanegra brothers, Emilio Garcia, Figo Ramirez. Should be a fun show. And then lastly, in Argentina, you've got another card as Musa Golam is going to be fighting in a WBA super featherweight title eliminator against Alan Zaid. I believe Zaid is a late replacement. I think Golam should be able to win this fight. I'd be surprised if he didn't. And, if he does, he'll be in very good position to fight the winner of Jazdekhan's Anthony Kakache. I don't know if he gets that fight. The WBA never orders their mandatories, but who knows? And also on that card is going to be Yamil Peralta. He's back coming off the draw against Ryan Rozicki. That was I think in December 2024. So finally returning against Juan Diaz. Maybe he gets a big fight in the cruiserweight division next. Guido Schramm is back on this as well, hoping to come off his 3-fight losing streak and a draw before that. And he's just fighting in an 8-rounder. So, yeah, that's all the action we have coming up this weekend. Now let's hop back into the news segment and talk about some more stuff that's been going on lately.
We're talking about Manny Pacquiao, Floyd Mayweather a little bit, an update on that fight. Apparently, Mayweather wanted the fight to be an exhibition. That doesn't surprise me. He's been doing a lot of exhibitions. He wanted it to not go on his pro record. Manny said no, it needs to be a pro fight. And I would assume that Netflix getting involved in the sphere, if you want to do this, you don't want it to be an exhibition. You want it to be a professional match. So they're going to do it as such, which I like. And then I think the president of MP Promotions also said that the Provodnikov exhibition has not been it's not official yet, and it may still not happen, with Manny's full focus being on the Mayweather fight, which as it should be. And I'm a little bit worried about them both taking exhibition fights before then. But that's really weird because they've already announced this fight for April 18th in Vegas. I don't understand why they would announce it if it's not yet confirmed to be happening. I don't know. It's a very, very weird situation. So that may not be happening, but as of right now, I think it is. Big news this week is Katie Taylor officially confirmed her retirement plans after a Dublin fight in the summer. She really wants that Croke Park fight. I hope they can get it for her. I don't understand why it's so hard for the government to just, give them the money to do the fight. She will sell it out. She's a superstar in Ireland, and she needs to be able to fight there one last time. And it's good to hear that she wants to retire. I think that she hasn't stayed around too long, and she loves fighting. But it's also it is probably time. And if she's able to get her homecoming, a farewell homecoming at a stadium in Ireland, that would be fantastic. And I think that's the right way to go. Ryan Garcia says he will come back down to 140 for the Shakur fight and wants to take his belt. I love hearing that because I always thought that Ryan Garcia moved up to 147 really quickly. I think that he wasn't able to make the 140 weight because of more of his, issues going on in his life with his craziness and shit than it was about his actual body not being able to make the weight. I'm sure it's still a tight cut for him as 135 was. But I think he can make it, and now that he's in a much better headspace and he really wants that fight.
He's saying, look, I'll come down to 140. Why not? Let's do it. I want to take your belt. And I think that makes more sense because Shakur just came up to 140. He's really a natural 135er. Having him come up to 147 just makes no sense. Ryan would have a huge size advantage. So I think it makes a lot more sense for Ryan to come down. And I absolutely love hearing that he's saying he's down to do that. And I hope it happens. Alexander Usyk he keeps on teasing some big news, and looks like he was teasing his return. We thought it was going to be against Deontay Wilder. Thankfully, it is not. I don't know who he fights. I really don't. I feel like it could be Caballel, but Caballel's fighting in May, apparently, in Germany. So I think the actual leading option now, from what we know, is probably Rico Verhoeven. Maybe that's on like a Netflix TKO card at this point. Um, I don't know because we know that's who Turkey wants him to fight. All of the other top guys at heavyweight all of a sudden are becoming booked, and Wilder was the one fight that it wasn't the top guy, but it's who Usyk wanted to fight, and he's booked. So I think that I think it's leading towards that could be the fight with Rico, and that is a big kind of crossover fight, I guess. So who knows? It was reported this week the UFC White House is going to cost them $60 million to put on, which is crazy because we know the Sphere cost them $20 million, and Dana White says it's too much. We're not going to do it again. It's a one-off event, and here we are with the White House, where this is definitely going to be a one-off event, but we know the U.S. government is not paying for it because I think people would be pretty upset if that's where their taxpayer money was going towards, was putting on a fight at the White House, which is obviously just a circus. Yeah, so it's going to cost them a lot of money. It doesn't really surprise me. It's a little bit more than I was expecting, but it is what it is. Apparently the media also said the date was being moved to Friday, June 26th. Dana quickly shut that down, saying the media is full of shit and that the date is going to stay on Sunday, June 14th. Also, Trump's birthday. I don't love the fight being on a Sunday because UFC is always on Saturday. I don't like them breaking that kind of tradition, but it's not a huge deal at the end of the day. And apparently the chances of Ilia Topuria Justin Gaethje headlining have decreased. With Trump's advisory apparently not wanting a Spanish-Georgian headlining with the high chance of knocking the American out. Because, look, Ilia would be a huge favorite against Justin Gaethje. At the end of the day, this is a kind of, this is sports washing. It is an advertisement for the U.S. government in a way, And they're not going to want to have all of the Americans on the card get knocked out. So, and look, if we were getting in the business of promoting this fight and trying to make fights so that the Americans win, we're not going to have the best fights possible. Because you're going to have a lot of Americans in lopsided fights as opposed to the best fights, which is Ilia Topuria fighting somebody like Justin Gaethje. And Ilia Topuria would be a big favorite in that. And I think that just eliminates the potential for a lot of good fights to be made because you're going to want to save American fighters from losing and want to have them win. So we'll see. I don't know. Ilia was also on Aiden Ross the other day, and a lot of news came out of that, but most notably says he will fight in the summer. He's unsure if it's in the White House or not, as we just said, but proposes a pound-for-pound championship belt between him and Islam in between 155 and 170. This is something that somebody said before, like what if they fight at 165, kind of like a catch weight. I don't really care. If they do it at that way, at a catch weight, that's fine. I doubt they would. I think eventually it'll have to be Ilia coming up to 170 eventually, but I do really want to see that fight. I also had a back and forth with Jake Paul. It was just kind of funny. They were both just talking shit. Probably was set up beforehand. Yeah, that's so much. I think a lot of people were just going crazy with all this Ilia stuff from the stream, where a lot of it was just kind of the same stuff we always hear. Like every week we hear something about Islam versus Ilia, like, oh, they say they're down for it, and it's like, okay, of course they are. Doesn't mean it's happening. Richardson Hitchens has been ordered to defend his IBF super lightweight title against Landolfo Delgado. Now, this shouldn't be a surprise. The fight with Duarte was a mandatory. Was voluntary. Delgado was already the mandatory challenger, and since that wasn't able to happen, their IBF saying like, okay, you got to go fight Delgado, and that sucks for Duarte because he was going to get his title shot, and now somebody else is getting ordered it, but he was already cutting the line. At least as far as, the rankings are concerned, he was cutting the line, and now he is not going to be able to. There's also a chance that Hitchens may not be able to. He may just vacate. In fact, a lot of people are surprised he didn't just get stripped in the first place because he wasn't able to make weight. His cut to 140 is very, very big and obviously dangerous. He was hospitalized, so I don't think that he should fight at 140 again. I think he has at least one more fight at 140 in him, but I think it's probably best to just go up to 147 now. especially considering he's the IBF champion, which means he can essentially just walk into a title shot in the weight class above, where it's Lewis Crocker. And Hitchens definitely beats Lewis Crocker. And of course, Lewis Crocker's going to have to beat Liam Paro. But who's Liam Paro's one wide loss to? Richardson Hitchens. So that IBF belt at 147 is just waiting on him right now. I definitely think it's time to move up. And if he takes either of those guys as opponents, it's going to be an easy win for him. Kamaru Usman said he's not getting Islam, which is good because he shouldn't get the title shot, and that he was offered Dricus du Plessis, but turned it down because he only wants meaningful fights. Now I understand Usman's at 170. They offered him a fight at 185, but you talk about meaningful fights. You're fighting a former champion who is also the #1 contender in the weight class. In other words, almost like a title eliminator fight. So it's just like, what are you talking about? You only want meaningful fights. You either want a title shot or McGregor. Is what it sounds like. It's like a big name, and I don't know. I think you should just go ahead and take the DDP fight. I would rather him just stay at 170 and fight there, but if the UFC is only going to offer him middleweight fights, then that's what you do. It was announced yesterday that on April 25th in Paris, we're going to get Tony Yoka versus Lawrence Okoli and Bakary Samake versus Ermal Hadribiaj. Samake, I think, is ranked #1 at 154 pounds with the WBC. That fight is a final eliminator, so winner will be called mandatory to the winner of Sebastian Fundora, Keith Thurman. So very important fight. I think that if Samake wins that, which I expect him to, although his opponent's also undefeated, he's going to get a very big boost in notoriety and popularity. He's like a built fighter, and he's got a high knockout ratio, I believe. So he wins that. He's going to become probably enter those top 10 rankings with Ring Magazine at 154, and I'm sure Queensberry will start to headline him more as they just signed him. But yeah, that main event, Tony Yoka, Lawrence Okoli, I think this makes a lot of sense. They shared the card in Nigeria in December. It kind of makes sense. I mean, Tony Yoka apparently is set to go back to the amateurs because he wants to try and win another Olympic gold medal. However, Lawrence Okoli, I guess that they want to cash out before they go back down. I think that Lawrence Okoli beats Tony Yoka. I hope it's exciting. We know Okoli's a very boring fighter. I hope that he's able to make this one interesting. But you have to think Okoli's a decent favorite in here. We'll see. Tony Yoka has not fought a legit guy in the pro ranks in like years, it feels like. So now he has an opportunity to show what he's made of, and we'll see if he's able to beat Lawrence Okoli. But it's a tall order. It's a very tall order. But I like that card. I really do. Another card that was announced, a very good card in Japan on April 11th. We knew this one was coming. Tenshin Nasukawa versus Juan Francisco Estrada. It's a WBC bantamweight eliminator. I don't understand how Tenshin's already in an eliminator when he just lost the title fight. But oh well, I think him and Estrada is a good fight. I think Estrada is not yet washed. But I mean, if Tenshin's able to beat him, that is a huge feather in his cap. That shows like, wow, that's a fantastic win for his boxing career. So I'm really excited for it, and he's a superstar in Japan. Also on the card, you're going to have Tomoya Tsuboi. I think this is just like his 4th pro fight. He's going to be fighting Pedro Guevara. I mean, he was just like an interim champion and definitely a top 10 guy in the division around that. So that's a another big step up for him, but I think he's able to beat Pedro Guevara. I mean, he's moving very quickly as a pro. And then Kyosuke Takami versus Angel Ayala is on this card. 2 guys who are just coming off of losing their titles. It's at flyweight, so Takami's moving up. But I love this. Neither of them are taking soft touches. They both were undefeated, just had their first pro losses, and again, lost their world championships, and they're going straight in with each other. Love that fight. It's probably my favorite fight on the card, maybe. And then it's also being reported, because it hasn't been confirmed yet, no contract was signed before the announcement, that Seiya Tsutsumi versus Anthony Vargas could fall on this card as well, and that would be for the WBA bantamweight title. So we could get a world title fight on this card, and that's one that's been in talks for a long time now, and definitely one that Tsutsumi wins. But Vargas is the champion in recess, so he does deserve to get that title fight when he comes back, and I would love to see it on this card. I mean, this April card is going to be fantastic. Jairo Patai says he'll be very effing disappointed if he gets no unifications this year. This whole thing with Zuffa Boxing and Jai is so weird because he is not the kind of guy who wants to fight for the Zuffa title. He's always talked about undisputed. That's all he wants. And I don't know if Zuffa's going to get that for him. I don't even know if his IBF title is on the line against Brandon Galantin next month. So I'm really unsure about if he is going to get that unifications, and I think that the Zuffa could underdeliver for him, and he'll voice that he's upset with that, and he'll probably try to get out of his contract, and he'll leave them when it's done if they can't provide for him, and I don't expect that they will.
It's being reported that Alexis Rocha versus Jojo Diaz, a deal for that fight at welterweight has been made for March 14th. I mean, that March 14th Golden Boy card is going to be very fun. Alexis Rocha's first fight in a little bit over a year since the first Curiel fight. And he was meant to fight him in January. That didn't happen because I think he had a weight issue or something, but he got hospitalized week of, fell ill, whatever. But Jojo Diaz, coming off a good performance against Regis Prograis, this is a really weird fight. I mean, Rocha is like a top 10 guy at welterweight. I don't understand why he's fighting Jojo Diaz, who's a 140 pounder, or at least he's been a 140 pounder. Before that, he was a 135 pounder. Like, I don't really get this fight. I feel like it's a step down in competition for Rocha. I think he wanted to get his feet wet against a decent opponent who's not going to get stopped easily before he tries to go and get another rematch with Curiel set up. But who knows? PFL announced yet another card for Sioux Falls on May 2nd. I'm not sure how to say it. I believe it's in like North Dakota, South Dakota. I don't know. May 2nd, Logan Storley versus Florim Zendelli. So a top 10 fight. I think at welterweight, if I'm correct. Yeah, I mean, solid enough fight, I guess. It's going to be an interesting. I mean, PFL, my issue with them is that they're doing way more cards, and I'm happy about it. You know, big cards, we love it. But where are all the title fights? Where are all the title fights? You had 2 on the February card and 1 in Spain. Their next 4 fights, their next 4 fight cards, no title fights on them. I don't understand what happened. Like they felt like every card was gonna have a title fight, and they don't all have to have one. I mean, Paul Hughes doesn't have to have a title fight on his card. Johnny Eblen versus Brian Battle doesn't need a title on it. But some of these other cards, I'm like, I could use a title fight on that card, especially considering Sergio Pettis is fighting. He's the number 1 ranked contender at bantamweight. Why is he not fighting somebody else in the top 5 for that title? Why is he fighting someone who's not ranked? I don't know. It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. There's also reports that Zuffa Boxing is planning to have Umar Zambekov versus Hot Rod Redivaj Kalajazic. I'm still learning how to say his name. For July, and that would be for the Zuffa Boxing light heavyweight title. This is the kind of thing I think Zuffa can succeed at. You have 2 guys come onto your show early on, and they both put on incredible knockout wins. And after that, it's like, all right, well, let's match them up. And let's make it be for the title. These are probably our 2 best 175ers that we have. It's going to be a big fight for them. They both of their profiles just grew massively, especially Umar Zambekov. And this is what you do. And now you're going to platform and give him a title. Like, I have no issue with that whatsoever. I think Zuffa by the end of the year needs to have the majority of their divisions have champions in. And it looks like 175 is the one they're planning for next. Maybe there's another one in between then they'll do. But yeah, I love that fight. David Jimenez versus Ayumu Sano has been announced for April 19th in Kyrgyzstan. Not too familiar with Sano, but this is a WBA interim super flyweight title fight. Jimenez, I think, is one of the best 115-pounders in the world. He's had that interim title for a bit, and I mean, say Bam moves up to bantamweight, which we think he may. If he does so before this April 19th day, this will be for a world title. So, important fight to watch. And then it was also announced that Jacob Bank is having a quick turnaround after knocking out everyone's favorite fighter, William Skull. He's going to be back April 25th, back in Denmark fighting Paulinas Injolonimu. I'm not too familiar with Injolonimu, but it's a WBC title eliminator. So who wins this fight is going to be in really good position to fight for that WBC belt against Christian and Billy. I mean, I would have preferred if he could have just gotten the fight with Hamza Shiraz for the WBO title. I understand why he's being skipped over for that, but it is what it is. Yeah, so some smaller fights got announced as well, but that's everything I've got for today. Really, really interesting, this whole Zuffa Boxing and Queensberry and Matchroom war that's going on, and Conor Benn fighting $15 million against Regis Prograis for a co-main event slot. It's insane. But yeah, huge weekend coming up. Navarrete versus Nunez, UFC Mexico. It's going to be a fun one. Thank y'all so much for listening, and peace out.